Welcome back to the Pretty Good series, where I talk about new shows or movies that I have enjoyed. These shows can range from being pretty good to masterpieces, otherwise known as the ranking pyramid given to me by the Hollywood elite. And of course, there's no spoilers involved. I may start a pretty bad series too, but that may be hard because I really like watching things and giving them credit where credit is due. But back to it. I recently watched the new Fallout show on Amazon and was pleasantly surprised by how good it was. To preface, I've played through all of the Fallout games aside from Fallout 1, so upon hearing the announcement of this being made, I was both filled with excitement and dread, as I know a lot of video game adaptations into shows or movies don't work out too well and dissatisfy fans. Like, as a big fan of the Halo game series as well, I was pretty disappointed with that show. I'm not comparing the two because I know a lot of people have been like, well, it's better than Halo in order to justify it being good, but I'm just saying, objectively, I didn't like the Halo show as much. Honestly, the trailer for the show made me excited because we saw so much reference from the Fallout universe. However, it didn't show much about the story, and I was aware it could easily be terrible. Upon watching the show though, I became engrossed in the story, which was actually so good. I think setting up two separate stories, first one being that going on inside the vault, as well as the story of the main protagonist Lucy, after she has left the vault, was so good. And linking these two stories together was a pretty great way of telling the story, rather than it just being this adventure into the wasteland filled with references of the Fallout universe for Fallout fans to nerd out over, and for newcomers of the series to not care about. Also, I guess you could consider the pre-war storyline as its own story as well, because it links to the story in such a great way, and is interesting as its own story. But I saw that as more of a flashback rather than its own storyline, but in hindsight, it definitely is its own. I think some of the appeal of the show, especially for people who haven't seen it, is the quality cast they got to be a part of this work. We have Ella Purnell, who my first introduction to was from Yellow Jackets, and I thought she did great in that role, but it was nice to see her in something else, and I think she did really great in this one as well. We also have Kyle MacLachlan, who has been around in the industry for a while, and although he wasn't there much for the entirety of the show... My dog is barking. I think it honestly gives some credibility to the show's cast as well, and he did a really good job in his role as Lucy's father and the nice overseer of the vault who really has a shady past. Also, if you look at Kyle MacLachlan's Instagram and all his other social medias recently, he's definitely doing some interesting things.
You're the murderer! I knew it! I knew it! You're such a bitch! You're such a fucking bitch!
Moving on, I think Michael Emerson was also really great in this. Although he was only in a few episodes, he did great, and I love his shifty and unsettling on-screen personality, as it fit really well within the Fallout universe. We also had Moises Arias, which I of course know for his childhood roles on Disney Channel, but the last thing I saw him in was the 2019 film Monos, which was a pretty great film, and his role in that was great too. But it makes me happy to see him still acting, and I honestly think that he did a really great job in this show, and really carried that secondary storyline within the vault. It made it something worth being a part of the story. Lastly, but certainly not least, we have Walton Goggins, who in every role is great, but I think he really carried the show with his outstanding acting and with his character's storyline. I honestly would argue that he's almost more so the main protagonist of this show rather than Ella Purnell's character Lucy is, as his story was so interesting and developed this show so well into something that I loved to watch, and really thought carried its own as a show, rather than just a shout out to fans. Also glad that he didn't play too much into his ghoul role as well, and tried to put on a raspy voice or make more of it than he should have, because it honestly would have been hard to watch.
Smooth skin. All right, McKissin.
But he just acted as he would without the makeup, and I think it does a lot more for the show, rather than him being too expressive as a ghoul. I think it was a good example of less is more in this scenario. Oh, I also liked seeing Johnny Pemberton because I think he's just a funny dude and honestly a good actor. I recently was listening to a podcast with him and Duncan Trussell, and it was a fun time all around to listen to. But going back to the show, I'm not going to have any spoilers within this, and I think within this pretty good series, I'm going to try to avoid spoilers altogether, because I want people to watch these shows too. But I want to say that for those who know nothing about the Fallout franchise, this show is still viable as a great show to watch. The writing in it is honestly surprisingly really good, and you don't need to know any lore behind the franchise to enjoy this show. For Fallout fans, knowing the lore may make some of the scenes especially more interesting and fun, but they really did their best to make it accessible for anyone to watch. What I loved about it too is that they didn't just push a bunch of information into your face for people who don't know the lore to catch up quickly. They taught the world to the audience as Lucy learned it, and they dispersed information about both the overworld as well as the vault throughout the show rather than all at once. As well as this, the character design and the set design was so good and believable. It didn't feel like a set at all, and honestly they did such a good job of bringing this world to life in every aspect of the universe. I think if you haven't watched this show and you aren't a fan of the Fallout series, you'd love it regardless, and would enjoy the story for how it is. And I'm sure after watching this series, people who don't know the lore would be inclined to learn more about Fallout lore, because it is honestly a well-written but also easily digestible story that spans over so many games and years. Okay, now we're talking to the fans of the Fallout universe. Guys, this show was so much better than I could have expected. They had so many good references to the Fallout games without shoving it down our throat as being just visual stimuli for Fallout fans. Also, they clearly set up the ending for a Season 2 in one of our favorite places, and I hope so much that it does get a Season 2 because what they set up was awesome, and I'm looking forward to this development. I think the coolest part about this is that Todd Howard, the creator of the Fallout games, was a producer for the show and had a lot of involvement, and the company has confirmed that this is in fact canon to the Fallout storyline. It's interesting to me because this series is pretty close to where Fallout 5 is supposed to be located.
Allegedly. Allegedly.
Which is in San Francisco, where this one is set in Los Angeles, and I honestly feel like the show is going to have some involvement within the next game. Although, I'm not sure because the next Fallout game isn't supposed to release until 2030, because they're releasing the new Elder Scrolls game first, which sucks, but also I'm fine with, because I love the Elder Scrolls series just as much. I'm just on a Fallout high at the moment and would love to get both games sooner. But don't get me wrong, Skyrim was my shit, and I can't tell you how many times I played through that game.
Dude, I know you, my man.
Are you a sellsword? I don't like your kind.
You're Mellow Mike, dude. You want some ranch?
No honor, no loyalty, unreliable.
You're being mad weird right now, dude.
I don't know you.
What is up with you, dude? You're being like a narc right now.
But anyways, I know that LA and San Francisco are like 6 hours away from each other, but in the world of Fallout, I feel like we will be seeing at least some references to the show, if not direct involvement in the show within the new game when it comes out. Honestly, knowing this info when watching the show, it felt like I was a part of something bigger being created and lined up within the Fallout universe as I was watching, and it felt really cool to see. I'm not sure what time period Fallout 5 will be set in, but I hope it's after the show. For reference, the Fallout universe timeline goes as follows. Fallout 76 is set in 2102, Fallout 1 is set in 2161, Fallout 2 is set in 2241, Fallout 3 is set in 2277, Fallout New Vegas is set in 2281, Fallout 4 is set in 2287, and now the Fallout show, which is the newest installment, is set in 2296. So hopefully, Fallout 5 will be set after the events of the Fallout show. But long story short, the Fallout show was surprisingly great. My overall rating would be more than just a pretty good, so I'll give it a great. I think for both fans of the universe as well as newcomers to the Fallout franchise, both groups will be happy with the quality of this show and enjoy the quality of the world and its writing, and want to see more once they finish this first season. If you guys enjoyed this video, I encourage you to leave a like and comment and subscribe to the channel. Any support is appreciated and helps me to be able to keep making videos like this in the future. I also just made a Patreon, so if you would like to support me further, you can join me on there and get exclusive content, interact with me, and even suggest what videos you want to see in the future. But if that's not your thing, then just interaction with the video is all the support I need. Also, feel free to follow me on Instagram at KonsFilmStuff, where I post film pictures I've taken, music, and movies I've enjoyed recently, and yeah, have a good one.